be here.
There it is. Thank you. So I should go ahead and mute.
Yes, until you're ready to talk.
8, 9.
I did. You doubted me, John?
Do you know if they're on? Carol, can you ask if they're on?
Oh, that's fine. Splendid. I would, but nobody's there.
Oh. I wonder if somebody's coming.
He said that we weren't going to be able to be on channel 16.
Oh, we're not?
What I was told.
Yes.
Was the email.
16 to the light. Go.
The door's open, and but no one's in there. This is so weird.
It is a different way of.
Good evening, everyone. Terrence, would you like to come and lead us in a prayer?
I want to thank each of you for your leadership and service for our community. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we bow our heads in humility, knowing that you are the supreme authority and source of wisdom, understanding, knowledge, and strength. We ask for your forgiveness as individuals and as a city for our many sins and for not acknowledging you and glorifying you as you are worthy. Lord, we ask you to heal our land. We pray for our city leaders and staff, our first responders, medical professionals, businesses, government and private entities, schools, churches, and citizens. Protect, keep, and provide for each one as only you can. We pray that you give the wisdom, grace, and unity needed by our city council and staff tonight to make the decisions for the welfare of our community. We acknowledge that each person involved is present by your divine appointment for such a time as this. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Terry. I'd like to officially open the meeting. Matthew, if you want to try it remotely, would you like to lead us in a pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America.
United States of America,
And
and to the
the
republic
republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the consent agenda for council to consider the approval of the city council meetings, the special city council meeting of March 2nd, city council meeting and closed sessions for March 2nd also, and March 16th. Are there any questions? Is there a motion to approve?
make a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. We have no public hearings tonight. We have one special presentation. The city doesn't give out a lot of proclamations, and when we do, it's usually to recognize a particular event or circumstances, or the accomplishments of a person or an entity as it relates to the community betterment. Each year when I give this particular proclamation, I have mixed emotions. I have mixed emotions because, on one hand, it's very sad that we have things like child abuse and children that fall through the legal cracks through no fault of their own. But on the other hand, I'm happy and we're very fortunate to have an organization like CASA. Professional people that run and professional people that serve on their board, and a group of people that give an enormous amount of time and talent, and in some cases treasure, for them to look after a kid and steer them through. And their work has enormous long-term benefits for that child. So I do want to thank them very much, and I do want to present a proclamation. I like to read proclamations because I think the words are important. Whereas, through strengthening family and communities within the borders of Rolla, Missouri, we are together on this day marking a continual commitment to making impacting positive differences in the lives of our children. Whereas children thrive when they are physically, socially, emotionally, and educationally on track, as well as safeguarded from child abuse and neglect. And whereas it is crucial for us to note the societal concerns that arise when a child's long-term health and well-being are not addressed adequately. And whereas effective child abuse prevention programs are essential and succeed because of the meaningful community partnerships created amongst citizens, social service agencies, schools, businesses, law enforcement agencies, medical professionals, military, nonprofits, faith-based organizations, civic organizations such as CASA and Pecan, and other child-serving agencies. And whereas public awareness and educational efforts, such as Pinwheels for Prevention, Wear Blue Day, as well as other school and community engagements, aid in the protection of our children. And whereas all citizens can play a role in preventing child abuse and neglect through simple acts such as volunteering your time, mentoring a child, providing a meal to a family in need, or even giving a few hours of rest to a parent or caregiver. Now therefore I, Louis John Magditz IV, Mayor of the City of Rolla, do hereby proclaim April 2020 Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Month. And I would like to present this proclamation to Matt.
I'm Matthew Evans, the Executive Director for CASA South Central Missouri, and we thank everybody so much for helping us throughout the year, especially this month, and it is Child Abuse Awareness Month. We really have a challenge this year with the situation as it is. We have great volunteers and great community members who are supporting us at this time. We want to appreciate it, and thanks so much to the Mayor and to the City Council for allowing us to have this opportunity tonight. Thank you.
Lou, you want to get a picture?
Yeah.
Yes, please. No, I don't want the trash sign behind you, please.
You want Larry?
Yeah, there's
You want
good.
that?
I don't want the exit sign either. Okay, smiling, 1, 2, there goes Larry. Smiling, smiling, thank you.
Thank you. John, we might have a technical difficulty here. Thank you. Thank you. Next section is report of mayor or city or council boards and commissions. Are there any questions from council regarding those? If not, moving on to old business. The first is an ordinance rezoning 101 South Rucker from C1 Neighborhood Commercial District to C2 Retail District. Tom?
I'm here if you have any questions. I did not bring up the PowerPoint this time since this is just a second reading, but just to remind you, this was at 101 South Rucker, request to rezone from C1 Neighborhood Commercial to C2, which is the General Retail District. This is at the corner of Rucker and Black Street, which is north of Highway 72 and east of Bishop Street or Highway 63. The applicant recently purchased the building with the intent to remodel the building for use as a restaurant. The restaurant use is allowed in the current zoning district. However, alcohol sales with the restaurant use is not allowed. And so basically the request is to rezone in order to allow for the alcohol sales. The request does appear to be in compliance with the comprehensive plan since it designates the areas being approved for community-wide commercial type uses, not just neighborhood type commercial uses. And the Planning and Zoning Commission did vote on March 10th to recommend that the City Council approve this request with a vote of 8-0. Do you have any questions for me?
I've got one.
Jody, Jacob, Monty, and Ann. We don't have video, so I'm not going to know if you have a question. John, you have a question in the meantime?
Yes, Tom, do we know what's going in there yet? Has anybody submitted any plans?
He has not submitted the remodel plans as far as I know, but he has started tearing down a portion of the building that was falling down. But the applicant is the person who owned the Kyoto Gardens restaurant, and so this would be where he'd be moving the restaurant to.
Okay, thank you.
David, did you have a question, or you were just signaling a return? You're good?
No questions.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you need to remind them to keep their video on.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Jacob, Jody, Monty, and Ann. Can you, okay, Monty? Jody, Jacob, and Ann, if you can turn your video on.
I am too stupid to get mine on. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to just break in.
Okay.
How do I turn mine on?
And you had yours on when you first
Yeah,
logged
just,
in.
It's in
Just-
the bottom left-hand corner. There's mute and then stop or start video.
Right.
You click on that button. It should probably have a red X through it right now. Okay.
Move your mouse down there.
There you go.
there you go.
Am I on now?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, Jody, you're going to have to interrupt me because I won't be able to see you. Okay, we had this is a final reading. So the final reading, please.
An ordinance to approve the rezoning of 101 South Rucker Avenue from the C1 Neighborhood Commercial District to the C2 General Retail District.
Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Matthew, and who is the second?
Me?
Rachel.
Rachel, okay. Motion made and second, roll call vote, please.
Crowe,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Bowling,
Yes.
Muse,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
11 A's.
Ordinance is approved. The next item is an ordinance authorizing me to enter into a hangar ground lease with Dr. Wilkerson for the airport. John?
Thank you, Mayor. We've been working on this for several months. You might recall that the city took this building over, is what we refer to as the old John Weiss hangar at the airport. We took that over a few years ago after its 40-year ground lease was expired. We have been since leasing that to Larry Roth, who in turn was subleasing at least part of that to Dr. Ron Wilkerson. A couple months ago, council authorized us to go back out for a solicitation and just see if there was some interest in the market to acquire the building from the city, make some improvements, and in turn, the city would enter into a long-term ground lease with that property. So basically, reinvesting back into the property, then rolling those improvements back into a long-term lease. Dr. Ron Wilkerson was the only proposal that we received. It was virtually a nominal amount to purchase, $1,000 to purchase the building, but there's a commitment to invest $55,000 within 3 years, or the building reverts back to the city. We've been through a couple of readings, review of this. In addition to the investment that he'll be making in that building, the city will be receiving $1,800 a year on the ground lease for the initial term of 20 years with an inflationary adjustment in there every year. And then at that point, the investment will have been capitalized and will be then subject to renewal or reauthorization with Dr. Wilkerson based on market rates at that time. So we are recommending approval for final reading tonight. Any questions from council?
Thank you. May we have the final reading?
Yes. An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, a hangar ground lease between Dr. Ronald Wilkerson, doing business as Vichy Enterprises LLC, and the city of Rolla, Missouri.
Is there a motion to approve the ordinance?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and second. Roll call vote, please.
Everly,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Crow,
Matthew?
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
11 ayes.
Ordinance is approved. Next item is an ordinance authorizing me to enter into an agreement with Kelpie Contracting for the University Drive pedestrian bridge. Steve? Or Darren?
So the last council meeting, about 3 weeks ago, council awarded the bid to Kelp Contracting, the low bidder. We are waiting on concurrence and work from MoDOT. We received that via email, so staff is recommending that the final reading of the ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Kelp Contracting Incorporated for $1,785,970.88. Any questions?
Any questions from council? If not, may we have final reading?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, a certain agreement between the city of Rolla, Missouri and Kelpie Contracting Incorporated for University Drive Pedestrian Bridge, Project 359.
Is there a motion to approve the ordinance?
Make a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second. Roll call vote, please.
Schneider,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
is that a yes? Murphy,
Ann?
Yes.
Schott,
Yes, you mean?
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
11 ayes.
Ordinance is approved. Moving on to new business. The first item is a consideration of proposals for existing buildings as an option for a new animal shelter. John?
Thank you, Mayor. In 2014, we received a very generous donation through the late Bob X estate, and it was for $441,000, and it was just described as for animal care. That triggered or started a process of doing a campaign to raise funds to replace the old facility, the 1970s version facility currently located off of Sharp Road. Council challenged staff and a community organization to raise those funds after hiring a company called Shelter Planners of America. We estimated a campaign of between $1.2 and $1.5 million. After a lot of diligence and hard work by the Citizens Committee, over the last 4 or 5 years, we have really topped out that effort at about $725,000 in funds, including Mr. Bobek's contributions. So the reality was we were looking at a substantial delay in being able to deliver a new animal shelter project for the community, something that we do know the community feels strongly about. We've had hundreds of people giving $10 and $50 and $100, but we're talking about needing tens and $20,000 and $50,000 donations to close the gap of $1.2 million to $1.5 million. About 3 months ago, a local business person with a existing building approached the city about the possibility of our acquiring an existing facility, an existing structure. We brought that to the city council in closed session, at least weighed that consideration, and city council was interested and open to the idea of going out and doing a solicitation. We want to do that as a very public process and make sure that the community was aware of what we were doing, and if there were other locations out there, we would certainly entertain those. So we did an advertisement about 45 days ago, ran that for about 3.5 weeks, advertised it locally. We mailed directly to All the property owners, realtors, realtors are involved with business, commercial properties, a lot of the developers that we have in the community, and sent a direct notice with our outline of what our minimum specifications were. And we were pleased to get 2 proposals for that. One was from the Charlotte J. Barrick Trust for the location of 1100 Highway 72. That has been the event center over the last several years. We received a second location from the Williams Real Property LLC, real estate firm, representing the property at 11530 Twitty Drive. That's a 6,000 square foot facility. The first one was a 21,000 square foot facility, one on 2.57 acres, the other on 2.51 acres. Both met all of our requirements, the fundamental requirements of what we were looking for, and we see them as a real viable option. We did ask for a pricing, but not a fixed price. We wanted to get an idea if this is something we could do within our means of $700,000-800,000, but we weren't prepared to firm up a number and commit them to that. It was just some idea that we would know whether to proceed. So pleased to report that I think both of them are viable projects. One is certainly a big building that has some opportunity. The other one, very much a newer building that almost looks like a project that would serve well for an animal shelter. So what we're asking for at this point is to go to the next step, and I've laid out in the council packets 6, what the mayor likes to refer to as, what do you say?
Gated decisions.
Gated decisions, where we are assessing each part of this incrementally. The first would be tonight, asking council to authorize the city engineer and codes administrator to do a more detailed look at each of those 2 facilities and do an assessment. It's not a full engineering assessment. We're not structural engineers at this point, but our guys really do know buildings and construction. So that would be the first view, just to kind of get an assessment of the building. We'll report that back to the city council. If council deems that one or both of those properties at that point require or justify additional research, we would bring back to council and ask to go on to step 2. That would be something in May, some kind of a public hearing identifying one or both of those facilities so that we could early on deem whether the neighborhood is supportive of those projects. Assuming we can get through that hurdle and there's still interest in pursuing, we would then solicit proposals for a conceptual feasibility design of the building, how that could be retrofitted to really meet this, the goal, and come up with a more firm estimate on cost for renovation. And that would be a solicitation of firms. We might retain somebody like Shelter Planners of America who has access to architectural firms. We might look at local architectural firms that could do that phase of analysis for us. That's going to take some money to do that. I don't think a significant investment, but to have an engineer really come in or an architect really come in and estimate how do you convert this space into proper HVAC, plumbing, code, ingress, egress, all those kinds of things really does require some design element. If that 1 or 2 of those projects still merit consideration, we would then really move into a final design program in October to December, and these are all preliminary dates, but to give you some idea how this might progress. That would really nail down cost estimating based on a specific design criteria. Then if that still is prudent and feasible on one or either of those, really at that point we're down to one to spend that kind of money. We would enter into confidential negotiations on acquisition. And at that point, realistically, we can move into a construction design, final design construction phase, perhaps within another 6 to 9 months. And so late 2021 might be very feasible to take the funds that we've received through donations and have a project that is going to happen probably 5 years or more quicker or earlier than we would otherwise if we had to raise all those dollars. We also know that there's other interested donors, but they've been hesitant knowing that this project has been dragging, and we would continue a fundraising communication effort because we'll still want to operate this facility. We want to finish this out with proper furnishings, fixtures, and equipment, and all of that depends on the operational efficiency of the facility. So tonight all we're asking for is an opportunity for, with council approval, to do a staff assessment of each of those structures and report back with you in the next 30 days or so. Be happy to take any questions on that. Okay, Carolyn has a question.
Okay, the property on Twitty Drive is new or fairly new.
Yeah.
And I've seen both properties, but it's 6,000 square feet. The other one, how old is that building? And from 6,000 to 21,000 square feet, how much do we really need?
Yeah,
Have a-
when we retained Shelter Planners of America to do the assessment on our existing facility, we have about 4,500 square foot in our existing facility, and it's a hodgepodge of buildings, right? 3 or 4 different buildings, storage, outdoor kennels, and the indoor facility. They came back with a design concept of about 5,500 square foot. So when we put out the solicitation, we said nothing less than 6,000 square foot, which gives us some opportunity for doing a little more in expansion. Both of these buildings, though the existing one on 72 has lots of space, way more than we need today. We could do lots of other things with the extra space. Even the one that's 6,000 square foot on Twitty Drive very much has the capacity of just adding new structural steel and extending the building out. So both have reasonable acreage for outdoor play area, for parking, and for building expansion. So they're just 2 interesting proposals. And the answer to the age of the building on 72, I've been here 23 years, and it was referred to then as the old skating rink
I was going to
property.
say, that's
So
what I've heard.
I'm guessing that's a 40-year building. We can find that out. I'll talk to the owner and certainly get that date.
And condition of it, I mean, I know.
The condition's in pretty good shape, and in fact, a substantial renovation was done about, 6, 7, 8 years ago, when it was first as an event center and then sold, and I guess initially it was more of a bar,
Yes.
recreational facility, and then an event center, and the owner invested quite a bit on the infrastructure, the utilities, so it's in really good shape.
I think it was built in 78 or 79 or 80.
You probably remember hanging out there, huh? Yeah, so that would put it at that 40-year age, so that seems about what the building design looks like. So I'm just looking at the council members, any other questions? You know, the shaking of that no is helpful, it's good, thank you.
Thank you, John. Next item on a new business is an update on the stay-at-home order. Last week, council enacted a stay-at-home ordinance. We at City Hall didn't expect action to be taken last week, so we really didn't have in place a proper procedure to implement it, what all of you actually enacted. So this week, we developed an application process in order to determine what an essential business is versus a non-essential business as it relates to the ordinance. Businesses will initially self-determine and submit that to a city review team for a decision. We've also set up an appeal process when differences of opinion occur. We've also spoken to Chief Fagan to determine the level of enforcement that will occur, at least during the initial phases. And John will go over all these in more detail. With the recent action by Governor Parsons, there are also differences between the city ordinance and his declaration. John will go through those. They're basically two different things, but they're important nonetheless. Having 2 different systems, if you will, is a little confusing, not only for us, but for the citizens. And I know the county is getting some pressure to take some action, and we hope that they don't necessarily interject a third option to this. Before turning it over to John, I'm going to talk about this week. We, as expected, we have received a lot of calls and emails. And for those that are watching at home, if you have any questions or comments, the email is admin, ADMIN, @rollacity.org. Please don't hesitate to send your questions or comments. But we've probably this week taken more than 30, perhaps less than 50 calls or emails. And when you look at them all and kind of put them into 1 or 2 buckets, most of them, very few have actually been quote-unquote complaints, but there's a few. The biggest bucket by large are questions regarding how is my business impacted? Am I essential or am I not essential? And after about day 2, you realize that that's not an easy question to answer. There's a lot of nuances that we have to work through, and quite frankly, there's a number of people this week that we have not been able to answer that question definitively. The other group of comments and questions from citizens, and this was a substantial number, and I'm quite surprised by it, but there's a lot of people that are just flat out concerned what that means when they either drive to the city. There's a woman at St. James called and says, am I allowed just to drive into Rolla, Missouri, or am I going to get pulled over by the police? We've had people ask that, hey, I've got cabin fever, can I just drive around Rolla? I'm not necessarily going anywhere. Am I going to get arrested? And so on and so forth. Questions where somebody was asking whether or not they can drive across town to help take care of a family member. So all of these questions are good because we learn from each and every one of them. So with all that said, John, would you go over the procedure?
Thank you, Mayor. My gosh, I'm gonna say we probably had 150 emails and phone calls. It's been interesting, but as the Mayor said, people have been very respectful, just trying to really get an understanding of what this really means. In the council packet, what I had prepared to do is just to review what our ordinance was saying, and we included like the frequently asked questions. We even included a 5x7 we've now copied and do have postcards that we're going to distribute through the police department, parks department as they engage in the community. We're actually going to distribute some to the city council members that you can have that available. It answers kind of the easy questions of what's the intent of this ordinance. But so rely on what I had written in the council packet. I think it's almost as prudent at this point to really talk about what the blend is between now the governor's order and the city's procedure or an ordinance going forward. Important, I wanted to start off with this statement from the governor's Q&A that they've distributed just in the last couple of days, and it goes right to the core of both of our ordinances, both the governor's order and the city's ordinance. This is the core of what these ordinances and orders all over the state of Missouri are really all about. So this is the one from Missouri. This order directs all Missourians to avoid leaving their residences unless necessary and to practice social distancing when they need to travel outside their homes to work, access food, prescriptions, healthcare, and other necessities, or to engage in outdoor activity. This order does not require all businesses statewide to close or cease operations. So that's the intent of the state's order. And despite the wording of the two documents being very different, that's really what the intent of our order is too. So when people call and say, well, am I essential business or not, it really goes back to the citizen. Is your travel outside of your home essential? Do you have to make that trip? If you don't have to make that trip, then you should be staying home. And that's when we get into some of these gray areas. Do I have to get a haircut? Do I have to have my fingernails done? You know, those, and there's just a fraction. I'd like to go shopping for a new vehicle. That's what the ordinance is really about. It's saying, no, if you don't have to do those things, then they say you can't do those things, but realistically we understand the limitations on enforcement. So we all need to be asking that question. Do I have to leave my home to do something in emergency, or in essence, of essential? If that I do, then of course we have a right and an obligation to do that, to take care of our loved ones, to buy those things that we need to have. So I think it's important to focus on really what we're trying to achieve with these ordinances. So the contrast between Rolla and the state. So we know that we passed ours along with the declaration of a local emergency on March 30th. Ours takes effect today. The governor issued his on Friday, April 3rd, also took effect today. Again, the similar intentions of both, but there are some differences on some key elements, and I wanted to touch on those key elements. The state's order expires on April 24th. Our ordinance expires on May 11th. Now, we talked a little bit about whether we should revisit that date. Was there something magical about it? And in hindsight, when we were at the special meeting a week ago, when we talked a lot about it, if you remember the blank I had on the starting date, I just really put the May 11th date as an arbitrary date. I really thought it might be another couple of weeks before he enacted it. I added about 3 weeks to that, and that's where May 11th came from. There is no science behind that date at all. I wish we'd have talked about that and just said, is that an appropriate date? Because we ran into conflict with the school district who was saying at least through April 30th. Now we have the governor's declaration saying April 24th. Nevertheless, our ordinance prevails. It's a more strict interpretation and subject to council review and amendment, which council can clearly do by an ordinance. We can change that date. And we've said all along that date is not some definitive target, right? If we see suddenly it's cured in Phelps County in the United States and we're not risking damage or concern, council certainly would roll that date back. However, we find ourselves on April 30th and find out that we're still getting risk and there's concern, the date may go May 11th and beyond. But that date became a real issue with a lot of our businesses. A lot of our small businesses who we are deeming non-essential were saying, okay, I get it, for 2 or 3 weeks you're asking me to lock it down, but to say some arbitrary 5-week period out, that's asking a whole lot when we don't have this information, we don't have this positive test in Phelps County at this point. So I would consider that May 11th date, while an ordinance and is valid, it's a set date. What I've been hearing from council members, from the mayors, we talked with the health department, it is a fluid date, and that if there's justification for rolling it back sooner, council will take that action. If there's need to extend it beyond that, council will take that action. So I think on April 20th, the next meeting, we'll know a lot more than we know tonight about the effectiveness of really all of these stay-at-home orders. So Missouri's order imposes, this is the second big difference, Missouri's order imposes limitations on occupancy for essential businesses. It really was a great suggestion. I hadn't seen that in any of the other state mandates prior to the state taking the issue. So other cities and counties, I hadn't seen the occupancy limit. The state's ordinance or order says that if you're an essential business and you're located less than 10,000 square foot, you must limit your posted occupancy to 25% of the city's established occupancy code, or a formula that the state provided. They didn't provide it initially, but they've since come back and clarified that over the weekend. And you go by business, you go by the greater of those two. So we have been working with Chief Smith, with our codes administrator, working with some of the biggest businesses out there and just sort of saying, okay, what does that number really mean for you? What is your occupancy? For essential businesses that are greater than 10,000 square foot, that occupancy limit is 10% of the city's established occupancy code, or the formula derived by the governor's guidelines in that respect. As talking with Chief Smith today, that number, even though it sounds significant, 10% of what would otherwise be the occupancy at Walmart, for instance, or Kroger, or Aldi's, or Menards, any of these large retailers are still open, the number is still quite significant. For Walmart, for instance, it's over 400 at that count, before they would then have to literally limit the access to people and have them waiting outside. We're monitoring that. We've actually, Chief, if I can say that, we've actually been assisting the health department on tracking a little bit of that. The businesses literally have people counting at the front, so there is a monitoring of this. People are taking these mandates and these strong guidelines very critically, very important, so we're working through it. That's a big difference, and we think that is an advantage in the state order that we did not address in the city code. Missouri's ordinance, this is the third one, does not specifically prohibit non-essential businesses. Now, this is really adding some confusion, right? We spent all of last week trying to fill these calls of what's essential and not essential. And we like to qualify that. I got to put this out there. Every business is essential. We recognize that. Every business has employees. Every business is providing a service. So I always refer to it non-essential as described in that ordinance for purposes of this pandemic response. So massage facilities, hairdressers, dog grooming places, Hobby Lobby, they're essential businesses. And we've been hearing from customers that they're essential businesses. But for purposes for the next few weeks, couple weeks to few weeks, discouraging, shutting down, not operating is really what we're trying to achieve. But while the state of Missouri's order allows non-essential businesses to operate as long as they have no more than 10 people, and that includes employees in the space with the 6-foot spacing, our ordinance does not. It says non-essential services are not allowed to operate except for what they call minimum basic operations. Make sure that you can keep your workers working at home, you've protected your inventory, security, those kinds of things. The governor's guideline says that you take the more restrictive. So you take the state, or if the cities have enacted something more restrictive, then that is still valid on the books. And so we are still approaching ours that we are going to use that non-essential businesses are not legally operating except for minimum basic standards. And we're adopting the occupancy requirements out of the state's portion of their order. The fourth one, big distinction between the two, is that Missouri's order authorizes local public health authorities, that's the word they use, to enforce the order by any legal means available. Rolla does not have a local public health authority. We delegated that authority to the Phelps County Health Department. So the Phelps County Health Department really enforces those provisions of the state governance where myself, administration, codes, public safety enforces those provisions that are more restrictive and go beyond that. The City of Rolla's ordinance authorizes enforcement through, if absolutely necessary, and this is after education, information, giving them business opportunity to really make sure they understand the repercussions. Rolla's ordinance authorizes a criminal action. It's a misdemeanor violation, but you could be cited, $500 and/or 90 days in jail once municipal court is re-engaged in 30, 45 days, something like that. The county's authority currently would be limited to civil penalty, and that's what the health department would have to address. And I think the county commission is going to take this issue up at least this week and try and understand what the real responsibilities are for the local public health authorities as spelled out in the state order. So that's really the distinction between the two documents. So what we're really asking tonight, council consideration, the Missouri order makes it clear that local authorities, cities and counties may enact and enforce their rules and regulations that are more restrictive than the state's order. So in talking with the mayor today, we identified 4 options for the city. One is to do nothing and to proceed with our ordinance as it's laid out. We rely on the Phelps County Health Department to enforce that portion of occupancy imposed by the state with our cooperation, and choosing not to amend will lead to conflicting directives, particularly as it pertains to non-essential businesses and the ending date. So in other words, if we stay just the way we are, we'll have our rules in the books. We'll be trying to blend that with the state rules. The individual citizen, the businesses are going to be seeing these conflicts, struggling with how does this all fall. And then the county, who may take up an action on their own, could come up with a third order altogether different for Phelps County. In conversations, we're encouraging them to go with one or the other if they're going to take any action, but that's really up to the county commission to decide. But that's the risk of doing nothing, that we have this confusion on non-essential businesses in particular, and the end date. Option 2 would be to amend the city ordinance to specifically incorporate the occupancy limits adopted by state so that the city is doing that enforcement entirely. We, of course, do that cooperation with Ashley and the Phelps County Health Department, but that enforcement mechanism through the ability to issue citations or pulling a business license reverts to the city. Option 3 would be to amend the city ordinance to revise the termination date, which is one of the significant distinctions between the two, to match the state's termination date of April 24th, or the council could consider changing it to match Rolla Public Schools' date of April 30th, both subject to extension. The fourth option would be to rescind the city's ordinance altogether and simply adopt the state's order for enforcement. Council would have to do an ordinance to rescind and to adopt. Choosing to rescind eliminates the consistency in directives between the state, county, and city. So why might we do that? Well, then we're just all operating under one program. Our recommendation, after looking at those 4 and sort of reading the details, we're recommending, and city administration is recommending, we stay with option 1 at this point, and that we don't take any real action tonight to amend our ordinance and to reevaluate all of this at the next city council meeting on April 20th, when we have a chance to see what the impacts have been to stay-at-home mandates in Rolla and now as a result of the state. Trying to get in there and tweak our ordinance is going to require a first and second reading. It's going to require a drafting of a document, and that just all takes time. And right now we're in this fluid environment where it seems every 2 weeks something new is coming. And so while I think there are improvements we could make to our ordinance, we're just not recommending that we try to anticipate what that should look like and draft an ordinance to amend at this point, and we sort of plow ahead and continue implementation as we've laid out. So really, this is an issue for a lot of council discerning. So I know Rachel has her hand up. So Mayor, do you want to conduct the Q&A, and I can jump in as needed?
Yeah, let's start with David.
I was going to say real quick that I agree that with what John said in terms of sticking with number one.
Okay, thank you. Rachel?
So my question was really more thinking ahead. If we do follow Sean's recommendation about doing nothing, is the city then going to work on potentially drafting material for this kind of future amendment right? That if we're determining we might want to include some of the occupancy limits or we want to amend the date, that there'll be something for us to look at next time, or we'll just find out what happens?
I didn't hear half of what you said, Rachel, but I think what you're saying is if we do nothing, what's the next point of action, right? In 2 weeks, what are you expecting us to come back with? Was that essentially your question?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. I was just curious about, is the city going to potentially be drafting something for us to look at if we might take up 2 or 3 at the next meeting?
Yeah, the only thing eminent would be the date, and I don't know that that's really critical that we necessarily change it now. So our thinking, Rachel, is to just use the next 2 weeks, work with what we have, assess what's going on around us, and so on and so forth. The governor might take different action, the county might take different action. So no, I don't think we're necessarily using this time to draft something different.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Okay, so that was an update. We're not really asking for action. Oh, I'm sorry, Carolyn.
I'm sorry, I'm here. Well, I keep hearing that in the next 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, there's really going to be, we're going to see a lot of change in the amount of coronavirus that is, it's going to be, they know that we have it, more people have it, and or this. So I think keeping it as it is for those reasons would be pertinent right now. And then at that point, you know, maybe change.
Changing it now is only confusion.
Yes.
But let me tell you what I've done, this week. I don't know for myself that this ordinance is much more than symbolic. What I tell people, I use it as a platform, and the platform being is go back to the common sense things, those big 5. If you don't need to be out of your house, stay the hell home. Just protect yourself and protect others. If everybody does that, with or without an ordinance, we'll be in good shape. But clearly, if the situation changes or people are not meeting the law, the words, or the intent, then we'll have to come back to you and ratchet it up.
I have heard something that you had said earlier. I have heard 2 people, no names. If I don't get out of here and go for a ride, I'm going to kill him. Or her. So I think in some cases, people just want to get out, and even if they ride in their car, they don't get out and go anywhere.
Yeah.
Public.
And technically speaking, if they got pulled over and they said they weren't going to an essential function, they're not complying with the ordinance. Now, that said, I think we are taking, I don't want to speak for Chief Fagan, but I think we're taking a common sense approach to enforcement, and officers are going to use discretion. One of the things that could change is going to be not the playgrounds. Playgrounds are closing, the parks. The example I give is a basketball court. If an officer drives by and mom or dad are the only ones on the court shooting baskets with their son or daughter, to me, that's fine. An officer goes by and sees 15 teenagers playing basketball on a half a court, yeah, my guess is they're going to stop and have a conversation. And I think right now we have the trust in our officers to make those determinations. Any questions from those remote? Marie?
Yeah, I have a question about just that example that you just brought up about basketball courts. So there's a group of young adults that plays in the park across the street from my house every evening, and they were here today just like they are every other day. So, I'm not going to call 911 for, teenagers playing basketball. What's the mechanism for concerns about gatherings?
I think send us a note, and we will talk to Chief Fagan when you see those things. Before we leave the subject, John, can you circle back, because we do need some sort of procedure so we can answer questions consistently regarding the business. Can you go back to the review, the appeal, and what we're envisioning there?
Yeah. It's actually a good chance to clarify what we mean by do nothing. We're not suggesting we're not going to enforce the ordinance. I think the council understands, but I want to make sure the public understands. We're proposing not to amend our ordinance, but we will do the enforcement of essential businesses and non-essential businesses as once we can get them updated and make sure they understand what that distinction is. So it's been difficult, as the mayor said. We've been fielding all these phone calls and emails asking, well, what am I? And to a large degree, myself consulting with, whether that's Carol or Millie or checking with the mayor, have been giving the guidance that we can. Some of them are pretty clear, that the ordinance lays it out and just says you're just not allowed to do a lot of personal service things where you can't get this 6-foot separation. So some of them have been real clear. Hobby Lobby, I had the conversation with them on Friday morning saying, I've determined administratively that you are a non-essential business, and then fortunately later that day, they made the corporate announcement. But none of that's a very good way of doing it, because if they happen to reach me or happen to reach the mayor or happen to reach Millie or Carol, or they happen to reach their city council members, we're all going to give a different take on that, and I think there's a risk in doing that. So what we started doing, our IT guys began to prepare an online application. We're calling it the Essential Business Determination Form that will be encouraging, quite frankly, all businesses who haven't closed for other reasons, it just makes sense, or they feel like they're not essential. We would encourage them to go to that site. It's going to be 1, maybe 2 pages in max, just asking some basic information, but we're going to put the burden on them in light of our ordinance, and we'll summarize some key elements of our ordinance. Why do you feel that you are an essential business? And then we'll take that to a committee, a team will actually make that decision, a group will make that decision, and then we will issue a statement within a day or 2 of that. We're not going to issue a document that somebody's essential or not essential. In fact, none of these ordinances are requiring any kind of documentation, but we'll give somebody, a business, a definitive administrative ruling based on a team consensus, and that will stand subject to enforcement provisions. So we'll notify, again, educate. If there is an appeal to that, we want to have an appeal process where perhaps we just weren't looking at this appropriately. The appeal process would really be, what we're suggesting is the mayor and city councilor. That team of 2 would be able to have a appeal heard and a final determination made, all of it subject to this enforcement action as a last resort to get compliance. So right now we've been loosely giving answers to the degree we're able to, but we need to move that into a more formal process where the businesses are making their case. We give them a rendered decision, and hopefully we'll be launching all of that this week. We've got to fine-tune that in the next day or 2. Then we'll be encouraging driving businesses to that online form that will be on the city's website. So, does that answer the question?
Matthew has a question.
Oh, yes. Matthew.
John, while the appeal is pending, or while they're waiting for a report back from the city as to whether or not they're essential, are they allowed to stay open during that time?
I would say no. Well, if the team assigns them a non-essential status and they're appealing that administrative team, they can provide the information that will go to the mayor and the city councilor. And I say the city councilor because he's actually named as a part of the enforcement mechanism in our ordinance. They would have to stay closed until that body issues, that appeal issues a final determination. If I'm uncertain and administratively not able to give some answers, and there's been some cases that as of today, people have been asking for the last 2 or 3 days, and I'm just torn. There's elements of what they're doing that is essential. There's a lot of what they're doing is non-essential. I've said use your best judgment on the ordinance until we get this online review process in place. So it really depends whether I could give a definitive answer or the team can give a definitive answer, and they're appealing that, they would still be ordered closed at that point until the appeal comes out. This is just what we're suggesting. If council has other feedback or thoughts to that, we're happy to take that into consideration.
No, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
This is Jody.
Yes, Jody?
I would like to maybe put forth a suggestion that in addition to the mayor and the city councilor, that perhaps Mr. Krell could be part of that review team, even though I haven't asked him whether he would be willing. Seems like it would be a good idea to have a city council person on there and have a three-person review team.
I would be happy to
disagree.
serve in capacity. but
Want to come on?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jody.
We talked about it, and I think our intent, and understand that neither I or the city councilor is on the review team, so there's a break there for legitimacy. I think we prefer to keep it a small group to those at City Hall each and every day because of the time. I think if we try and do this with a larger group or a more formal group, we're going to be trying to schedule people's days and times, and those businesses are going to be impacted. So what we're envisioning is either same day or next day decisions. So for that matter, we would like to keep it small and compact.
I guess I would agree with the speed is of the essence when we're discussing that. Maybe if you have a tie, you could have Matt be the tiebreaker.
He's smiling. Okay, duly noted. Any other questions? Counselor, you have any comments?
Since ultimately the city council will be the final appeal, I would suggest keeping all city council off of that initial determination.
So that's the third backstop.
Yes.
There's review, there's the you and I appeal, and then all else fails, somebody could push it to the full council.
Correct.
Okay. Council persons, did you all hear that? Okay, good, thank you. Let's see where we at on the agenda here. Okay, thank you. Next one is a resolution authorizing me to enter into a temporary construction easement and permanent sidewalk and utility easements from from McDonald's Real Estate. Darren or Steve?
Yeah, I'll take this one. Both of these are related to the Kings Highway improvements. Both of them involve a temporary construction easement and a permanent utility easement. These are a little more detailed easement documents than the rest of the easements that we acquired on Kings Highway. These two companies asked for these agreements, and basically they just wanted to document that these improvements weren't going to cost them anything, we weren't going to interfere with their business. That everything on the city side, including the city and our contractors, are well insured, and that we identify the homeowner or the business owner from any damages that might be caused by either the city or the contractor. The first one we have is for McDonald's Real Estate Company, and it does in addition to the utility easement, it provides for a permanent sidewalk easement on the shared use path that will be on their Kings Highway improvements. We are recommending approval.
Any questions for Steve? Matthew?
Steve, is there a time frame of when you're hoping to move forward with the construction phase of this?
We are taking bids on the 15th of this month. I suspect it'll take us about a month or so to get the contract documents put together and a notice to proceed issued, and we'll begin with utility work soon thereafter.
Okay.
We're hoping that we'll get my share of the work done this year.
I guess I was just
It may spill into next year.
I guess I was just being optimistic with everything shut down that construction would move a lot faster, but I suppose it takes much longer than that.
Yeah, we are planning on doing the construction at night on the off business hours.
That's good. Thank you.
Any other council comments? If, David?
Yes, I had a quick question for Steve because I forgot to ask you before. The question is about the pedestrian bridge timing, when we think that'll be, what's the range of time, the earliest, the latest that might be done?
We started the design on the actual bridge itself ahead of the contract award so that we could stay on schedule. The fabricator is designing that bridge right now. We're hoping to take delivery in August, and the bridge will be set then.
So first use could be maybe September, October?
That's our hope.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, can we read the resolution?
A resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, a certain easement agreement between the city of Rolla, Missouri and the McDonald's Real Estate Company, a Delaware corporation, for improvements on Kings Highway.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Make a motion.
Carolyn made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Matthew. I think it was Matthew. All in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Did you read it?
No, you got,
I didn't think you did.
what?
Did you read it? Yeah, you read it.
I read it, but it has to be,
Please vote. Carol?
no, because we have so many. And it's hard to track.
Schott,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
yes?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so it's on. Bolin,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
11 A's.
Resolution is approved. The next one is related. It's a resolution authorizing me to accept a temporary construction and utility easement from Jade Properties.
Yes, sir. Jade's Properties is the Wendy's restaurant, and it's almost identical, not quite as lengthy, but it's the same key points in the agreement. We are recommending approval.
Any questions for Steve? If not, can we read the resolution?
A resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to accept on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, certain easements between the city of Rolla, Missouri and Jade Properties LLC for improvements on Kings Highway.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Ann and Carolyn. Roll call vote, please.
Reuter,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
11 A's.
Resolution is approved. Next item is an ordinance authorizing me to execute an agreement with HCR Engineering for the Southeast and Vichy Road water treatment improvements. Steve?
Yes, these next three items are also all related. The first item is the ordinance authorizing us to engage with HDR for construction services for the improvements at Vichy and Southeast Treatment Plant. I'm happy to report that the bids for both plants came in well below the estimate. We have a total bonding capacity of $27.75 million in bonding authority from the bond election. As it stands right now, including the two bids, the work done by HDR and our closing cost of SRF's funds for the bonding itself, we're going to be at about $24,575,000, which is going to leave us a little over $3 million in reserve for contingencies and that sort of thing. These projects should both be completed by the end of 2020. Mike Kalis from HDR and Jeff Meadows from Archer, I think, are both on the meeting tonight and available to answer any questions you might have about the contract.
Any questions from council? David?
Just a quick question. After we complete these projects that'll be done in 2020, Are there any other final things we would need to complete the project, or is that the end of our sewer updates?
Those never end. It's continuous improvements. But yeah, this is what we've got on the plate right now. This will end in 2021. It'll take about a year and a half to build these.
Okay, 2021, got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve the ordinance?
I have to read it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, a certain agreement between the city of Rolla, Missouri and HDR Engineering Incorporated for Southeast Wastewater Treatment Plant and Vichy Road Wastewater Treatment Plant improvements, construction phase services, task order number 12.
I'm sorry, that was the first reading anyway.
Yes.
Moving on to claims and/or fiscal transactions. The first is a motion awarding a bid for Project 473. As Steve mentioned, one of two associated with that project. Steve?
Yes, Mayor, we are recommending, and there's a recommendation letter from Mike Kalis from our consultant on the bids, recommending the project be awarded to the low bidder. I actually have two motions that I need tonight. The first motion will be to accept the bid and award the contract for Vichy Road wastewater plant improvements, base bid plus alternate one, in the amount of $6,208,000 to Midstate Pipeline Maintenance LLC. The second motion I need is to accept Midstate's Pipeline Maintenance LLC's DEB utilization positive efforts with respect to the Vichy Road treatment plant improvements as satisfactory and consistent with regulatory requirements. Those two motions are needed so that I can document that to DNR so that we can include that documentation in the big, long checklist of things that we need to do in order to close this loan with SRF. But the big step is to award the bids.
Any questions for Steve? If not, is there a motion to award the bid for the Vichy Road wastewater treatment plant to Midstate Pipeline?
Make a motion.
Carolyn made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
There's a second. Roll call vote, please.
Murphy,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes,
Reuter,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
11 A's.
Motion is approved. The second one is a motion to accept Midstate Pipeline's DBE utilization efforts.
So moved.
Monty made a
Second.
motion, Carolyn second. Roll call vote.
Bolin,
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Jordan,
Monty?
Monty,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Schneider,
yes.
11 A's.
Motions are approved. The next item is a motion awarding a bid for Project 473. No, I'm sorry. A motion awarding the bid for Project 505, which are asphalt improvements.
So
Steve?
we've got one more to go. We got this Project 473 Southeast Wastewater Plant improvements. But we need to do that one
Okay.
the same way we did Vichy.
All right, let's go back here.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Again, there's a letter from Mike Kalis in the packet recommending the low bidder, McClanahan Construction Company, for $14,156,988.99. That would be for both the base bid, alternate one and alternate two. And there's also a letter to accept McClanahan's Construction Company's DBE utilization with respect to the southeast, wastewater treatment plant improvements.
Any questions for Steve? If not, is there a motion to award the bid for the Southeast Wastewater Treatment Plant, the McClanahan Construction Company.
So moved. Second.
Motion made and second. Roll call vote.
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
11 A's.
Motion is approved. The second one is a motion to accept the DBE utilization of McClanahan Construction Company.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ann, did you second it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Roll call vote.
Mush,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Roder,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
11 A's.
Moving on to the next motion to award a bid for Project 505 asphalt improvements. Steve?
Actually, Darren will do this one.
Darren?
So we opened bids for fiscal year 2020 Phase 2 asphalt improvements. This phase lays Lions Club Drive from Route 63 to Route 72, Pebblestone from Rolla Street to Lions Club Drive, a short section of Bridge School Road near A1 Pump, and a small portion of Austin Lane. Melrose Quarry and Asphalt Supply LLC was the low bidder at $309,630.06. I will say that we've had problems with Melrose in the past with the quality of their asphalt, but they're now purchasing their asphalt from a supplier that's a MoDOT approved supplier, MoDOT approved mix design. So staff feels comfortable recommending the award of the bid to Melrose Quarry and Asphalt Supply LLC for $309,630.06, and also requesting first reading of ordinance for the same. Any questions?
Questions for Darren?
Darren, you said in the past you've had some issues with the asphalt. I guess that must have been quality of the asphalt or the lay of the asphalt. Can you explain that a little more?
It was the quality of the material. But like I said, they're no longer producing their own material. They're purchasing it from the plant north of town, and we've had good luck with that asphalt.
So in the past they were using their own, and now they're buying it.
That's correct.
Thank you, Darren.
This will be a two-step, if there's no other questions, this will be a two-step action. The first is to, lost my place here. The first is a motion to award the bid well, it's not in my packet, so I'm going to work from memory. To award the bid to low bidder, which was Melrose Asphalt.
So moved.
Second.
Is it motion made
Second.
and second? Oh, there you go. Okay, thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Roder,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Schott.
No shot, yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
11 A's.
Bid is awarded. May we have the first reading, please?
An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Rolla, Missouri to execute on behalf of the city of Rolla, Missouri, a certain agreement between the city of Rolla, Missouri and Melrose Quarry and Asphalt Supply LLC for fiscal year 2020 Phase 2 asphalt improvements, Project 505.
Thank you. Moving on to citizen communication, we had one scheduled by Ms. Wood. but this was done before she decided to not come before council. Her concern was the Greyhound bus depot and the number of what she will refer to as the homeless or transients that are being dropped off and causing some problems with her business and her employees, I believe. We're not in a position, the city, to not allow a Greyhound bus depot. So on that basis, she has decided that she did not need to come before city council. Mayor and the council comments. Let me defer to others first. Are there any council persons that have something they'd like to discuss? John?
Yeah, I'm curious to know if you guys have put any thought into, I know we don't know numbers yet, but this is going to have a negative impact on our sales tax revenue. Have you guys put any thought into that and how we want to look at this going forward?
We talked about it today, actually, and, you know, I think for this quarter and maybe next quarter, the impact will be somewhat muted, but as you get into Q3 and Q4, it could have significant events. So we're running those numbers now, but the biggest concern is probably going to be on the general fund. There's not a lot of options with that one. With some of the other funds, some of the capital expenditures could be pushed out a little further, some of the projects could be delayed a little bit, but the general fund is very susceptible. Roughly each 1% change in sales tax is about $40,000 to the general fund. So once we get this, these ordinances and the COVID issues kind of put in place, we'll circle back on that. But I think we have to be realistic that the city's going to take a significant hit in subsequent quarters. And I think we have to be realistic that we don't have extra financial reserves. So our reserves today are decent, but they're below the targets. So we could have to take some action. Hopefully it'll be into next fiscal year, but we'll see.
When will we know March numbers and April numbers? Is it a 30-day lag? Yeah, March. When will we see March revenue numbers?
They lag by 2 months, right, John? Yes.
2 months.
We'll know in 2 months.
Okay.
I don't think we're expecting a big drop. I think the drop will come in the following quarter. People are still been buying, they've been stocking up, so on and so forth. So, but as you get into the next couple of months, we will see that 2 months later.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? David?
Just a quick thing, piggyback on what John said. I don't know any of the details of this, and I was going to ask you if you do. Is there any aid to cities and municipalities from the federal government that would involve either any of the emergency work that's happening now or any of the things that are happening in the cities because of this? I don't know the answer to that, so I didn't know if you do.
I don't know, but we're not waiting. We're counting on it. So the city, Stephanie's office, has been putting in account numbers. So as we incur expenses, they will be allocated to particular accounts. So if and when that day comes that we can get reimbursement, we've got those numbers handy. But I don't know of anything as of yet approved.
There is the last congressional action included considerable funds for cities, but they were for over 500,000 population, so they have not released what we have below that. We've not seen, and nor do we really think we're going to see a real uptick in our expenses. We're going to have some overtime. Our real blow is going to be the loss of revenue, much like many businesses out there. Unfortunately, the one statement I saw that came out of the federal government on that act makes it very clear that they're not planning to do any reimbursement for lost income tax-wise, to cities and counties. So we're going to be dealing with the shortfall in the revenue more so than a unusual increase in our expenses.
I have one other quick thing, if I could.
Yes.
I just wanted to say, I know our environmental services professionals were out this weekend doing a lot of hard work for all of us, and I just want to say thank you so much to Brady, and if he can pass on to everyone over there that helped with the citywide cleanup. I know those guys were working hard, and people had a lot of stuff out, and it's just much appreciated to know that they're there for us and doing that hard work. The other thing I wanted to just say a thank you to and a recognition to is our public safety professionals. You know, these times of emergency are really showing us why we need to recognize the weight that they take on for all of us, and we need to show that through giving them all the support we can in terms of providing training they need, the equipment they need. Obviously, we've looked at the compensation and raises, and I just want to mention again that I personally want to thank them and make sure they know that we're committed to all we can to make their job and the stress they take on, reflective of their compensation and that too. And just a thank you again to all of them.
Thank you for that. Any other council comments? The one I had scheduled regarding a citizen's petition. Citizens are concerned about the health of our community, along with the potential extenuating circumstances brought on by the virus. And they've submitted to me a petition. This petition was prepared by the Rolla for Bernie 2020. It's an online petition sponsored by change.org, which as of yesterday had approximately 350 signatures. I have no way of knowing the validity or the residency of those that have signed it, but I recognize a number of names, including acquaintances, at least one city council person, one former council person, and several candidates for the upcoming municipal election. The document calls on me to take action on 10 different items. Several of those issues have been done last week with our recommendations to council and your action. Several of the issues related to utilities I will follow up this week. And lastly, several issues related to rent and mortgages I do not believe any action by me is necessary at this time. I do want to let those people that sign that petition know I am respectful of the action that you have taken, and I've gone through that and looked at each and every the 10 issues. So if council has a question, just feel free to ask. If not, comments for the good of the, Carolyn?
I'm sorry, I'm silent tonight.
Go ahead.
Well, reading through this, I had several actually, but part of the way this is written, I'm not sure if they're asking for a total forgiveness of rent or just putting a hold on it or what, but I mean, I want to point out that most landlords are not rich. They rent these properties, but they have a mortgage to pay too. Now, whether the banks will be forgiving it and as in letting them extend, I don't know. I mean, that's all up in the air. Part of it too is on the, let's see, what it was, the hotels. If we house people that are homeless or some that really can't afford much, however it works, into, say, hotels. Hotels typically would take care of sheets and towels, laundry. Are they required to do that? If these people go in there, do the hotel owners have to incur more expenses on their end to help these? I mean, it's not really written out how they want this to work. Just that they want this available for these people, and yes, everybody needs help. But
there's a lot of effort
There's a
that
line.
went into the document by whoever wrote it. I sensed there was a little cutting and pasting, though, because I was a little confused, too. There's certain actions that they asked me to take. Others were more written for someone like the governor to address. But I did go through it and looked at each of the 10 individually. In answer to your question about the hotel, the city does not have the wherewithal financially to put people in a hotel
that's what I figured.
if they're homeless. However, that said, I've had some communication with people in town. I think we need to get ready and be prepared, and that is, what if a homeless person has to be quarantined? I don't think we could wait until that day to come up with a solution. So last week and today, I've had some communication, and we're going to start to have some conversation in the community. But I think we would be wise to be prepared.
I do too.
Any other council comments? If not, comments for the good of the order? Carolyn?
Earlier, in the roll call vote, I thought it was hilarious because at whatever section in the middle, I think it was, she called rotor and rooter, and I really had to hold it not to laugh out. It just struck me. I thought, comedy in such a serious...
Let's see if Rotor and Rooter are smiling at that. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are.
I don't know if anybody else caught it, but I did immediately, and I thought, whoops,
They're good sports.
good.
I will say that growing up, I was on a swim team for many, many years, and my nickname was Roto. And not one I embraced, but it was there.
Kids can be cruel, right? Okay, we don't have any closed sessions for this evening, so meeting adjourned.
For you at home, here's